I actually never went to college, never went to university or anything like that. I actually started as an electrical contractor. I went to an electrical apprenticeship program. That led me into doing energy management projects. So we were controlling buildings, HVAC systems, and lighting systems back in 2005, before anyone really was doing any of that type of thing. And then 2008 hit, and my electrical contracting company basically kind of fell off. So at that same time was when the first iPhone came out. So I said, well, let's give apps development, let's give that a go, right? So we developed some of the first apps that were in the App Store, and that's kind of morphed into what we do today.
This has only come up recently over the last few days for me, actually, when I was asked to go on record something on TV back in the UK a couple of days ago, which was a debate about the pros and cons of using university for the stepping stone to the career path that you want. Guys, Matt Haycox here, and welcome to another episode of the Matt Haycox Show, where I've got a great guest with me today. Super excited to be talking to Matt Shields. This is actually also the first time we've recorded this in a studio and in Zoom at the same time, so I'm kind of already looking between two cameras and not knowing exactly what I'm going to say. But even if I don't know what I'm going to say, we're going to have a great conversation with an entrepreneur, a business owner, a tech expert, a podcast host, and an owner and investor in multifamily real estate too. So Matt, thanks a lot for being here, and I'm really excited to get talking to you.
I am as well. Thanks for having me, and I'm glad to hear that I'm the first person in the studio here. That's exciting.
I know. I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, though. I already feel like my head's like one of those bobbleheads. You know, I'm like,
yep, exactly.
Camera to
Where do I look? Where do I look?
Computer's a computer. Listen, you and I were having a brief chat before we started recording this, and already in the 3 or 4 minutes that we were talking, I've already got so many avenues I want to go down and some really interesting things. But look, just set the scene for the guys watching and listening to this about who you are, how you got here, and then I'm going to dig deep on some questions I've got for you.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I would say that I have an eclectic background. I actually never went to college, never went to university or anything like that. I actually started as an electrical contractor. So I went to an electrical apprenticeship program and started there. That led me into doing energy management projects. So we were controlling buildings, HVAC systems, and lighting systems back in 2005, before anyone really was doing any of that type of thing. And then 2008 hit, and my electrical contracting company wasn't doing as much volume anymore, basically kind of fell off. So at that same time was when the first iPhone came out. So I said, well, let's give apps development, let's give that a go, right? So we developed some of the first apps that were in the App Store, and that's kind of morphed into what we do today. So we help companies digitally transform their company. So, again, if they've got some type of analog process, maybe they're building manila folders and those folders are getting passed from person to person, we basically help digitize all of that. And of course, when COVID happened and everybody was working remotely, everyone was looking to take their old process and bring it online. So it's worked out well. And then we also have a number of real estate investing companies that we run and own. We've got Significant Lifestyle Communities, which invests in large multifamily real estate. Then we have Significant Property Management, which manages that real estate. And then No Small Ideas Construction, which also manages all the construction for each one of the projects. So in a nutshell, that's pretty well where I'm at today.
Now tell me, how old are you, by the way?
I am 45.
Okay, cool. So there was I wasn't just asking. There was a reason for that to set the scene. So look, I'm 42, and I just wanted to talk about your not going to university comment and just go down that hole for a minute, because this has only come up recently over the last few days for me, actually, when I was asked to go on record something on TV back in the UK a couple of days ago, which was a debate about the pros and cons of using university for the stepping stone to the career path that you want. And I was on there as the against the university, but not against. But to be clear, I'm not against. I'm pro open mind, pro options. I'm very, very pro education. But I came from, I was going to uni, or I would have been going to uni in 1998, 99, 2000, and it was a very, very different era to what we're in now. I mean, back in the mid to late 90s and before then as well. If you didn't go to university, it was as good as if you'd been written off for any career prospects. Certainly working for a corporation. And I guess guess fast forward, I say 20 years, but probably over the last 5, 6, 7 years, there's been a material shift there. And even the biggest corporations in the world, the Apples, the Googles, etc., no longer insist on a university or on a college education to be able to get a job there. Whereas, like I say, go back to the mid to late 90s, you probably couldn't get a job as a toilet cleaner in a corporation for that. Now, you've been an apprentice, and one of the many routes to the career that you want, should you not go down the university route. But I mean, now you're an employer as well, and I guess you're taking people on in all kinds of different walks of life. What's your take on educational options? The importance of university. I mean, I feel like I've already put too many answers to that rather than just framing a question. But you know where I'm going with it anyway.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that question. It's actually something that I'm pretty passionate about. I'm the same way. I personally believe that it depends on what it is that you want to do with your life. Fortunately for me, I pretty well had a good idea what I wanted to do. I actually started putting roofs on houses when I was maybe 10 years old or so. I grew up where my dad and I, we put additions on our house. We did drywall, we did plumbing. So I can honestly say that by the time I was 16, I pretty well knew how to fix almost everything in the house. And the reason why I went into electrical contracting was because that was one of the gray areas, we'll say, where I didn't really understand any of that, right? So that was the path that led me down to electrical contracting. And my goal was always to invest in, at the time, what I thought was I always wanted to invest in houses, right? So buy a house, fix it up, sell it, rent it out, whatever. So I just needed a job that allowed me to be able to qualify for those types of loans. So I mentioned how I had my own electrical contracting company. I did a 5-year apprenticeship program. And basically, as soon as I had enough time in the industry to be able to qualify for my state certification, I went and took that and opened up my own electrical contracting company. And I should also say too, I bought my first house when I was 19, and same thing, fixed it up, flipped it. And that same mentality, that same process was how I went through the electrical contracting company. I kind of kept that mindset throughout the entire process, where we would buy houses. If the electrical contracting was slow, I would have the guys go over there and work on those houses. So they kind of fed into one another, right? So getting back to your question, I completely believe, and especially today, I completely identify with what you're saying. Back when we were growing up, I was looked at like, oh, he's not going to be anything. He's not going to be anybody. But again, I already knew, like, there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to own my own company, and I knew what I was going to do, and I did all of that, right? So for the people that don't necessarily have that type of mindset, that type of mentality where they know exactly what they want to do, and I can't even necessarily say they would be the right person to go to college, because I think a lot of people go to college just to sort of kick the can down the road a little bit more. Like, I don't know what I want to do, right? But maybe I can find myself in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And if not, then I'll just pick something and maybe they're happy with it, maybe they're not, right? I think there's a lot to be said about really, and this is something that isn't taught in school, but really getting into your mindset and really diving into what it is that motivates you and drives you and what you're really interested in. And then once you know that, figure out a path to be able to deploy that into life, right? And again, there's all kinds of different avenues today. People are doing TikTok, this and that, and a lot easier today than what it used to be. But are those people even happy, right? You really want to get into your mindset and get that right, so that whatever it is that you're doing, you are happy with it, and it's not a daily slog where you're always dreading getting up and oh, I got to go and do this again. I got to do with that, right? That's no way to live, right? So I really think that a lot of people sort of skip over all of that, and they don't really necessarily try to find themselves, if you will. And I think that there needs to be a lot more emphasis in that process, that part of growing up, to be able to get yourself into a position that you're going to be happy in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, one thing that I was thinking about when you were just talking then, and it's like, I've dawned on me over the last 3 or 4 days since that original interview, is another big difference 20 odd years ago, I think, was the time pressure that was put on us as well. Not just that if you didn't go to uni, you were a failure, but also that if you didn't go to uni, like now, taking that year out, taking that gap year was really consider such a wasted year, because putting yourself back that year. And I always remember something my dad used to say to me as well, which was, if you haven't made it by the time you're 40, you're probably never going to make it. And it very much kind of almost was true back then as well, where I now look at things now, think at 42, I've been doing this for 25 years, but I also could have a complete different change of plan tomorrow, start something completely different, and still not feel that I've really lost any time or been delayed at all. Now, whether or not that is a difference in mentality and psychology nowadays, or maybe it's also to do with the fact it's a lot easier, not necessarily easier, but you could scale a business a lot quicker. I mean, you could literally start a business at age 45, or age 55, 62 nowadays, and go from 0 customers to 1 million customers and tens of millions of pounds in a matter of months or very few years. Whereas 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I mean, it was as good as an impossibility, because more money means more scale means more distribution, and and without the internet, distribution is a very very linear and clunky thing. So I mean, maybe there's that to it as well. We're going off on a right tangent now, aren't we? But it's quite an interesting thought.
It really is. And I think that to your point, you've developed those skills over the years as well. So you have that confidence, right? If you're someone who's 19, 20 years old, yeah, sure, you've grown up with the internet, you've grown up with all of this technology, but you don't necessarily know how to deploy that or how to be valuable to anyone. So again, taking your mindset, what you've learned over the last, 20, 25 years, and giving that to someone who's 18, 19, 20 years old, that's the key, so that they understand that, yeah, I can go out and do this, and I do have that possibility. You mentioned there's a lot of young people that have gone down this path because they've grown up with the technology and they somewhat understand it, and they've sort of carved out this little path, but there's still plenty of people that don't know what they're going to do, and they've never really used any of the distribution models or methods in their life this far to be able to do anything with it. So again, if we can give that gift to the younger generation, who knows what it'll turn into, and have more value out there for all of us in the world, right?
No, for sure. Well, look, let's talk about investing in real estate, and quite specifically with you. You were telling me before we came on camera that you've been building a big portfolio in multifamily real estate. I mean, multifamily real estate's a concept I don't think we really have it in the UK. I think it's much more an American thing than it is over in England. I mean, okay, yeah, we do get the occasional big blocks, but normally it's on a property by property basis. And I mean, I first really even heard the words multifamily real estate from Grant Cardone. I mean, he's always banging on, isn't he? Banging on about multiple doors, and if you've got 8 doors or 88 doors, when one or two of your tenants disappear, it doesn't affect your rental roll. I mean, is that the appeal to multifamily for you? Is it economies of scale and diversification of income, or is there more to it than that?
No, that's exactly what it is. When you think of, again, where I started, I was doing single homes, duplexes, triplexes, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people underneath one roof. I have to drive to that one location, or the team has to drive to that one location to be able to serve whatever there might be, right? So there's typically, you're not going to find single families right next to each other where you're going to have a huge block of them. You're not typically going to be able to buy a whole neighborhood of single families. And even if you did, you still have one person under one roof, one furnace, one HVAC system, one plumbing system. All of that stuff can have issues. And if that one unit goes down, or that one home has an issue, you only have one person that is helping pay for whatever those costs are. Whereas with multifamily, you can have 50, 100 plus people in one building underneath one roof, one plumbing system. So yeah, I mean, if anything goes wrong, it's going to impact more people. But like you mentioned, there's going to be more people that are going to be able to offset whatever those costs are. So from a scalability standpoint, it just makes so much more sense. And the amount of work that you have to do to find multifamily real estate, again, some of these larger properties, is pretty well the same amount of work as what you have to do to find one house, right? So if you're going to put in that effort, you might as well make a bigger impact and have a bigger impact with your acquisition rather than just going after that one property. So that's what appeals to me. And then obviously there's all kinds of other things, there's tax incentives and tax benefits to it. And especially since I have other businesses, the write-offs are great. So all of that stuff kind of plays into the benefits of multifamily, but in a nutshell.
And what's the downside? Just that the barrier to entry is a bit higher because rather than having a 30 grand deposit on a $300,000 house, you need a $300,000 deposit on a $3 million property. That's the only real downside.
I would say that's the only real downside, but here we have the ability to be able to syndicate things as well. So we'll bring a pool of investors. So this is a very relationship-based business. You want to be able to create as many relationships with different investors because you never know when their skill sets, their balance sheet is going to be needed to be able to bring in a deal. So we'll pool everyone together, and together we'll be able to take down a 20, 30, 40, $50 million, asset. But alone, we wouldn't necessarily be able to do that. So I would say that's probably, and this goes back to mindset as well. One of the biggest stumbling blocks that a lot of people run into the brick wall time and time again is there's no way that I can raise, $30 million. There's no way that I can do that. And it's all mindset. Once you do it, once you get over that, once you have the connections and the relationships that can help make this possible, you're able to see it. You just go in and rinse and repeat over and over and over again. It's basically the exact same process. So again, once you get through that mental block that you have, it becomes very, very possible, very, very doable. And again, I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that a lot of people have to go through.
I think that the lessons are very applicable across most, if not all, businesses. And it was making me very much think about my core business, which is lending, where I raise money from high net worth individuals and lend it onto SME businesses. And in the old days, I'd be doing 25k loans, 50k loans, and as my capital pool grew and as my investor base grew, I was doing 500k loans, and now we do 5 million, 6 million, 7, $8 million loans. And the old adage is just so true that it's the same effort to do a £5 million loan as it is to do a £50,000 loan, or it's the same effort to manage a £5 million investor as it is to manage a 100 grand investor. And if anything, it's actually easier when you get to the higher levels as well, because you're probably dealing with a higher caliber of borrower or a higher caliber of investor. Certainly a more professional person. I mean, when somebody's investing 10k or 20k or something into a project, then it's probably their last money, and they're probably desperate, and they're going to harass the living daylights out of you. And I think you can take that lesson and principle and apply it across most businesses.
Completely agree.
Let's move from businesses to podcasts. I know you're a podcast host. Just tell us a bit about your podcast and how it all began.
Yeah, so I started, originally it was called Pass the Secret Sauce. I started that in 2020 because I was stuck indoors during the pandemic, and I wanted to be able to connect with other entrepreneurs, see how other people were faring with their businesses and what was going on during that point in all of our lives, right? That really was the original idea. Was I just wanted to be able to connect with other entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are my people. I love talking business and learning from people and figuring out different ways to be able to make my business better. So as that has evolved, I've realized that the podcast is incredibly, incredibly powerful in being able to break down any type of walls, barriers that businesses typically put up, right? Commonly called the gatekeeper. I've been selling things pretty well my entire life, and you always have people that they have their secretary in the way. This person is put in the way to be able to stop any type of sales calls from coming in. With the podcast, it's a completely different mentality, right? You approach it, and actually our subject line whenever I reach out to someone is, I want you on my podcast. And that, when you think about that is, it's such a compliment to that person, because they feel like, wow, I must be doing something right. People are noticing me. I'm being recognized for whatever my accomplishments are. So it's a completely different mentality. And then you're able to spend an hour or so building that relationship with that person, which has led into all kinds of other opportunities, right? So we've had people that have invested in our real estate deals before. Actually, another side benefit of the podcast is, if we're struggling with something, if we have a question about something, whether that be SEO or lending or anything, we can reach out to experts in that field and say, we basically interview them and get our own questions answered. Right. So we're able to use the podcast as a way to be able to expand our business and solve our business problems by reaching out to the very experts that have walked this path before us and already figured all this stuff out. So great way to be able to expand your knowledge, break down those gatekeeper walls, and just get to meet a bunch of cool people that are doing amazing things, right? So it's benefits all around.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were obviously talking about this a bit before we came on camera as well, and I talk about it very often about the benefits of my podcast to me, and I think people who have never had a podcast, or people who maybe don't approach it with that business mindset, or automatically default to the kind of ego concept of a podcast. That, the benefit is that you're your own TV host or whatever it may be. But for me, that is absolutely at the bottom of the priority list. And like you say, being able to ask those questions of world experts and further your knowledge and fix your own problems. I mean, I often say that my podcast's a private conversation between me and an expert in a particular field that I get to pick the brains of, but my audience are lucky enough to be able to listen into that and get those nuggets that they can contextualize for themselves. But I mean, I always hammer on about the benefits of the podcast, but I think every business owner should have one. Whether or not it ever gets many views, ever gets many many listens, it doesn't matter. Just that chance to be able to meet great people, ask some great questions, and also then the next benefit of giving yourself that credibility perception when people Google you and see hosting a particular podcast guest is absolutely immeasurable.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, and I always advise other business owners the same thing. You should open up, or you should start your own podcast. Set the time aside. It's well worth it. You're going to meet amazing people, and it's and actually the other thing too is, and this is a mistake that I made, is being able to niche it down into something specific, right? Being able to focus it in on these type of people, so that way the listeners know, yeah, this is me. This is a podcast that I would be interested in, right? So being able to niche that down, that's something that a lot of people may not necessarily take into consideration when they're thinking about starting a podcast. But again, the more focused you can make it, the better.
How many episodes are you on yours now?
I think we've released about 210 or so, something like that. I think we're probably recorded around 220, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And what particular changes or improvements or differences have you noticed along the way? I mean, have you niched down particularly differently since the beginning, or have you kind of changed format? What lessons have you learned along the way?
Yeah, so we've always wanted to try to keep it very, very conversational, much like your podcast here. We did go down the path for a while of making it more story-based. So we would do this recording and we'd try to make a story out of the episode. And honestly, that was just a lot of work to be able to do that week in, week out. And we record typically about 2 podcasts a week. So that takes quite a bit of time to be able to try to create a story out of everyone's episode. So we went back to the more conversational side of things. I would say that our biggest change has come relatively recently, where again, we've gotten more focused. We actually just changed the name of the podcast from Pass the Secret Sauce to Invest in Square Feet, to again focus a little bit more on the investor. And going back to the real estate investment, this is something that I learned very, very early on, that you want to make sure, and this goes to single family homes, apartments, whatever, you want to always take into consideration what the square footage is. What a lot of people do, what they make the mistake of, is they will say, well, this comp over here, they've got a 2-bedroom for whatever, $2,000. We have a 2-bedroom. We should be able to get $2,000 for ours. So this is a process that you go through when you're acquiring these properties. You want to understand, what is that rent delta? How high can we make these rents, right? And the way to do that is to look at what other people are getting in the area. They've renovated their home, they've renovated their apartment. So this is what the market is, right? But the mistake that a lot of people might make is that $2,000 per month apartment or home might be 1,500 square feet, and your apartments are only 800 square feet. So you want to always divide that price by the square footage, so that you have an apples to apples comparison. So the $2,000 a month property that's 1,500 square feet, you would divide that down and get that square footage price, then multiply that price by however big yours is, and that's the amount that you can charge. And that's a mistake that a lot of people make. So invest in square feet is kind of the premise behind this. You want to always make sure that you're investing in square feet. And when you think about any type of business, just breaking it down to what is it that we're doing, what is it that we're buying, what is it that we're selling. And that's again kind of the premise behind the show, is being able to break business down into these smaller chunks, these easily to digest chunks of information, to be able to understand the bigger picture. So to answer your question, just very recently we rebranded to Invest in Square Feet and hired another audio engineer, which is again helping us edit all the episodes. And numbers are certainly growing. I think we've probably released maybe 4 or 5 episodes with that new format, and they're every week they're growing more and more. So it's been a great transition.
Did you have to kind of announce that transition, that name change and stuff, or did you just do it because it felt right?
Yeah, we just did it. And actually that was one of the questions that I had. I guess there's other people that would go through this exact same type of transformation as well, so this might be valuable. Again, when we made this transition, we had over 200 episodes of Pass the Secret Sauce recorded and released and all of that. We basically just took that exact same content, and it still says, Pass the Secret Sauce. We didn't go back and update any of it, but we just changed the names on all of those assets. So we still have all of the same old listeners, and the RSS feeds are all being redirected to the new one. So basically all of the assets, all of the listener base that we had grown on the first one have been transferred over onto the new one. And again, it's just a little bit more focused on this one. So we didn't necessarily have to start from scratch, if you will.
So listen, one of the things we were kind of preparing to talk about before this was your thoughts and strategies on identifying the perfect opportunity and maximising returns. I thought, when I saw that, I thought it was something I'm going to be very interested to hear about, because one of the problems nowadays is there's just too many opportunities, or rather the amount of opportunities out there are a blessing and a curse. And for somebody with fast fingers to be too trigger happy, to be too greedy, it is a curse that there are so many opportunities out there. So I mean, how do you go about identifying the best ones? When I say how would one go about identifying the best opportunities for them in such an overcrowded market?
Yeah. So I would say, like you said, fast fingers. Don't be so quick to commit to an opportunity. I'll say this goes back to the old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So if you get into this space, whatever your interest is, let's just say it's real estate, for instance. If you get into real estate and you see all of the opportunities that you're coming across are all giving 10, 12, 15% IRR, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, you get this one that's 30% IRR, right? There might be something wrong with the operator on that particular deal. So I mentioned this earlier. This is a very, very relationship-based business. So that goes for the investors as well. You should not jump right in because you see this huge potential in a property. You should get to know the people who are running these projects. You should get to know these operators. And even if that means you have to pass by that amazing deal, if those people are great operators, they'll come back with another deal. So it's really about establishing that relationship first before you jump in and start investing in the opportunity. And again, there's all kinds of platforms, there's all kinds of crowdfunding type opportunities that anyone can just post their particular project on, and nothing about those people running that particular deal, right? So this goes back to my philosophy on stocks as well. I don't particularly agree. I don't invest in the stock market because I don't know any of the people running any of these companies. I don't know any of the decisions that they're making. I don't know the type of people that they are. I basically apply that exact same type of philosophy to any of the opportunities that might be presented to us as well. Do I know those people? Do I have a network who might know those people, who have worked with those people before? I'd rather know who the team is behind the opportunity much more than understanding whatever they're putting down on paper as being the the returns that you can realize on that particular opportunity. So very much so, again, relationship based. I go back to that time and time again. Just build a relationship with the people first, get to know the people, and then make your decision whether or not you want to invest in them or not.
I couldn't agree or kind of echo or mirror those points more myself. I think, you talk about that there's always another deal, and that is the thing, even if these things looks too good to be true, actually is true, and you miss out on it, there's another one tomorrow and tomorrow and the next tomorrow. And again, like you said about backing the people, when I look at every abject financial failure I've had over the years, every one of them could have been avoided if I hadn't backed the wrong person. I know that might sound oversimplistic to say, but some of the people that I kind of went into business with, they took what could have almost been a sure thing and absolutely fucked it up. And every time that happened, that was really down to my trigger happy finger, and not doing enough due diligence on that person, or not, not spending enough time to get to know them, to build a relationship, and to really marry that with the opportunity. And it's always, even now, 25 years plus in doing this, I still make mistakes. I'll have a good period and then I'll fall off a cliff again. And every time I fall off that cliff and look back, it's always normally to do with speed and greed.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And it's, again, once you start to get to know the people, and this is again the part that not very many operators of any type of company, that's not necessarily where they focus, right? It's all about, look at my shiny OM or my shiny sales pitch, right? Look at this. It's, it doesn't come back to them. And that's really where you should be focusing. Actually, I ran across another investor who had an interesting way that he looks at the people. He wants to know what trials and tribulations, what are the hardships that you've gone through in your life? It doesn't necessarily have to even mean, in real estate, again, if that's what you're pitching, but what was your response when times got tough? Because times will always get tough. That will always come back again. And he wants to know how you handled that situation. Did you, stick your head in the sand and run the other direction, or did you work your way through it and figure out whatever the issue was? So that's a great way to be able, that's a great litmus test to be able to understand what people's personalities are like, and what they, again, how they react to the negative points of life, because again, it's going to come up time and time again. So
absolutely. Listen, Matt, I am conscious that you're a busy man with a hard stop on this on this great chat, but I hope that we're going to get together again sometime soon for a round two, because it's been fantastic to talk with you. Obviously, as always, we'll put in the show notes where people can link through to you. But just before you go, just let everyone know where they can find you, where they can follow you.
Yeah, I'd say shoot over to investinsquarefeet.com. We've got all kinds of different topics and entrepreneurial advice and all kinds of things there. So that's probably the best way to be able to reach out and get in touch with us. We also have a newsletter there that you can sign up for with special tips and advice from our guests. And then that's also how you find out about our particular opportunities that we have for investment as well. So that's how you can start the relationship. And again, we're very relationship based. So, once you're kind of in our network, you'll start to, understand how we do things and understand our personalities and what we're up to and all of that. So
perfect. Well, I'm gonna have a little look on there myself as well later. Perfect. Well, listen, Matt, thanks again for being here. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed listening as much as I've enjoyed talking to Matt. And like I say, we'll try and drag him back for a round two and dig deeper on some of that stuff in the future. As always, I've been the Matt Haycox. That's TheMattHaycox on all things social. If you've been watching this on YouTube, you can get the audio versions over on Spotify or iTunes. And if you've been listening on Spotify and iTunes, you can whiz over to YouTube and see my pretty face on these as well. So until the next time, thanks a lot, and thanks for being here, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Take care.